Welcome to Peter and Ruffy's football show here on STV2. Alan Ruff is alongside me, Peter Martin, and I'm delighted to say our special boot room guest tonight is former Celtic, Hibs, Wigan and Scotland midfielder Gary Caldwell. Isn't it great that I started by suggesting you as the midfielder? The opening question, I think, what was your best position? Where did you feel the most comfortable, in defence or in midfield?
Defence, I think. Some fans would probably say sub, but I think my best position was centre half. But I enjoyed playing other positions. I enjoyed playing holding midfield a lot, but didn't have the legs to do it as well as I'd have liked. I think the attributes I had were best suited to centre half. Yeah,
it's one of those things where sometimes if you get a situation where you make yourself so versatile for a manager, that can in some ways hinder people's careers.
Yeah, I think it helped mine, and I always say to players now, and I like players that can play out of position because it's good to have in your squad versatile players that can do a number of things for you. So I always felt, especially when I was younger, that playing at right back, I even played left back for Coventry for a few games, playing in midfield, I wouldn't have got those games if I couldn't do it, because the centre halves that were in the team were going to play. So having that versatility gave me experience. That then when I was old enough to get in at centre half, I could cope with it.
Yeah, the one thing that everybody, when they start to monitor young emerging Scottish players, is we always heard the two names, Gary Caldwell, Stephen Caldwell. Was there a bit of sibling rivalry? Was there an edge to it, or was it just a real desire for both of you to do well? What was in your mindset?
Yeah, I think there's always an edge. When you have a brother, there's always fights, there's always an edge. I think I was fortunate that he done everything first, so I had something to aim at and something to beat, whereas I think being first is more difficult. You have to go and do it. So I think back to, he played for Scotland schoolboys, so it was like, I have to play for Scotland schoolboys, and he then captained them. I have to do that. He went to Newcastle, I followed him there, so it was a bit easier for me that I could keep catching him, and in the end surpass him obviously, and do a bit more than him.
Yeah. If your mum or your family are taping this, that'll go down like a lead balloon, by the way, let me tell you. But Ruffy, he has that same competitive edge that you and many other footballers and managers come in here with. It's that will to succeed.
Yeah, and I can't imagine that having a brother, and then on the same lines. I mean, it must have been horrendous when you were living together and everything, and as you just said there, you're doing sort of following in the same footsteps to a certain extent. So I mean, the rivalry must have been unbelievable.
I think now it's great as well. We can talk, and even when we had careers at different clubs, and then had a really special time at Wigan when we played together. It was fantastic. But we can talk and discuss and help each other, and hopefully at some point in the future work together again.
Yeah.
I was going to say, do you show him your 50 medal, the cap for 50 medals? No.
no, that will start another argument. And remember, we've still got to get Stephen in here by hook or by crook. I mean, I'm going to take you back to the start of all. You mentioned Newcastle there. I mean, I've always thought of you as a confident boy, a driven boy. At Newcastle, when was it difficult to try and even break in there, 2001, 2004?
It was very difficult. It was at a time when they were, probably one of the big four, what you'd call the big four now. They were in that elite clubs in the Premier League, always pushing to try and win the Premier League. So the squad was very strong, and it was difficult to get in. But I always say, even though I didn't play for the first team there, it was a great decision because of the education that I got from, first of all, Alan Irvine in the youth team, a fantastic coach who I still keep in touch with, and has obviously went on to lots of different things in management in his own right, and Tommy Craig, who, again, another Scotsman, had a great coaching career, and they both not only taught me how to play football and play it the right way, I think, but they taught you values and hard work and dedication, and it was a really good grounding to go on and have a career in football.
Yeah. When you get that move eventually and start to get a bit of credit and the plaudits at Hibs, how did that all come about?
Well, I'd went on a few loans to Coventry and Derby and Darlington, so I'd kind of I had some games and got released from Newcastle. I think I had 60 odd professional games, which I think a lot of the time now academy players get released from clubs and they've got no games. So the lower league clubs or you know, SPL clubs, it's very difficult for them to take them because they're reluctant to do it with their lack of experience. So I was fortunate I had that experience and had the chance to come to Hibs first of all under Bobby and then with Tony Mowbray. And I absolutely loved it. I think it's a fantastic club. It still is. And it's obviously went on to build the stadium, the training ground since I was there, and the facilities they've got now are first class.
Yeah, and by the way, I have to say, you know, when I was looking at the team that you were involved in, I mean, some of the players on that side, you know, I always mentioned to a lot of people, had Hibs a stash of cash to hold you guys there. What a team you were playing in. There was really good players.
We did, yeah, just seen it now. We had a lot of great young players, but some good older players as well. Gary Smith, Stephen Glass, goalie Simon Brown. So they gave us great, you know, leadership and kept the young lads in line. And I suppose I was probably doing that then as well. You know, you've got Derek Reardon and Scott Brown, Gary O'Connor. Then you feel pretty old and mature compared to what they were doing. So it was a great time to play, and we were lucky that we weren't expected to win, and we could go to Ibrox and Parkhead and really play attractive football, have a right go and cause them all sorts of problems by the way we played, because Tony Mowbray, a great coach, great manager, plays the right way. And we had some great games against the Old Firm where we beat them on occasion, but other times didn't beat them, but won all the plaudits for the way we played.
Well, you talk about, you know, upbringing, mentality, you know, and all those values that you had. The one thing that I think, you know, with all those players that you've talked about there, they had a real self-belief as well. And in some cases, you know, they would look at a Rangers or Celtic and not bother it's Rangers or Celtic. The only downside I can see from that squad is the day I was at Hampden to watch you take on Livingston, when I thought you were absolute certainties to win that cup.
Yeah, big disappointment. You know, we'd beat. I didn't play in the quarter-final, but beat Celtic in the quarter, and then I came on loan and we beat Rangers in the semi-final on penalties. And I think the expectation, we had half of Hampden full. Livingston had, I think, 300 fans there.
Yeah, it was like and a corner of Livingston fans. Yeah.
The expectation on young players was, looking back, just too much on the day, but a massive learning curve and experience that, you know, to stand on Hampden. Fortunately, it was the only time I stood on Hampden and watched the other team go up and lift the cup, because it was a horrible experience and one which you never want to do again. Yeah,
the high obviously is a Hibs side that we're talking about. I mean, Ruffy, in your days you had some really good players, but this is a Hibs side that finished third in the Premier League.
Yeah, but it was a sort of a, like, I think I was there about 10 years before that, and we had the same crop coming through. We had John Collins coming through, we Mickey Weir, we Eddie May, with all these guys went on, and that was the same at the time when Gary was there. You know, these guys were just ready to break through, but Hibs have always been like that. They've always had young players who have started their career there and went on to bigger things.
Yeah, I mean, no mean feat to finish third in that division at that time.
No, it wasn't. It was a really strong league with Celtic and Rangers at the kind of peak of their powers. Hearts were a very strong team around about them. Craig Levine was manager, so it was very difficult to finish third and get into Europe, and that was always our aim most seasons to try and do that.
Was there a particular player that you liked playing alongside that you thought either he's going all the way, or, you know, I like playing with him because he's a class act?
I liked everyone, to be honest. Like I said, the experienced players were. I played with Stephen Glass at Newcastle in the reserves when he was coming down for the first team, and he was somebody that really guided the younger players and gave them, you know, valuable lessons and how to go and have a career, having had such a great career himself. And Gary Smith as well, for a centre half, was great. When we played together, it probably wasn't the quickest. Back to, but he taught me that, you know, sometimes you can't get as tight as you want to people if you haven't got the pace to recover, and different things that you could pick up and learn from him.
Was there a favourite game that sticks in your mind in the Hibs jersey?
Probably we played Celtic at Parkhead. We actually got beat 2-1. I scored the goal and we were outstanding. I remember Martin O'Neill after the game. They were playing AC Milan on the Tuesday, and he said, if it's as hard a game as we had today, then we'll be in for a tough night. And I thought, to say that about a young Hibs team that had came and really had a go, even though we lost the game, it was, we played with real spirit, we played with great quality, and it was a proud day even though we lost.
Yeah, okay. I've certainly enjoyed the first part of the programme. Hopefully you're enjoying it too. Coming up in the next part, we're going to talk about the Celtic years. Gary gets the move to Celtic, and of course we'll hear great tales of yet another manager that he worked under, which is of course Gordon Strachan, and not only winning games but winning every domestic honour. Ruffy, you got a League Cup, but this man managed to get all three in the bag.
That before he came in.
Yeah. Puts you on a complete downer, but don't worry, I won't make it too difficult for you. Hopefully in the next part, Gary's brother Stephen will still be watching the programme after part one. Join us after the break. Ruffy and myself joined by our special guest in the boot room, Gary Caldwell. Welcome back to Peter and Ruffy's football show here on STV2. Alan Ruff is alongside me, Peter Martin. I'm delighted that our special boot-room guest is Gary Caldwell. We were talking about his early career and, of course, just finished at the other end of that break on Hibernian. Now the move to Celtic. Was it always your ambition? Because I presume, looking back, were you a Celtic fan as a boy?
I was, yeah. I used to go. My uncles had a bus that went from Stirling, and me and my brother would go when we could. So I was a Celtic fan, and as I said, I'd loved my time at Hibs, but I always wanted to play for Celtic, and that was the natural progression, was to go and play there and try and be successful and win trophies and go from there.
Yeah, not too difficult to be convinced at the time. How did it all transpire?
Well, I was out of contract in the summer, and there was obviously links, and I'd spoke to Gordon Strachan about it, and I always kept Tony Mowbray, fully up to date. I told him everything. I was very honest and open with him, and he was great with me. He always said, if you want to play, I still need you to play, and I was always fine to keep playing. But the day I actually signed the pre-contract was a Thursday afternoon, and then I told him on the Friday morning. So he knew I'd signed the pre-contract, and the story actually broke on the Saturday morning, and we were playing Aberdeen. So 3 o'clock, I was in the team. He said, "Do you want to play?" I said, "Of course I do. I'll play right to the end of the season." And first time I got the ball, the boos went right round the stadium for the home fans, and it was loud. It was you could notice it. And then about 8 minutes into the game, I put a short back pass. Boys nipped in and scored. I thought, wow, this is going to be a long day. And actually played quite well after that, and we tried to get back in the game but lost the game 1-0. And Tony Mowbray was great after, came out publicly, backed me, stuck up for me, and said that the fans were out of order. So it was difficult, that game, but he came out and backed me, and from then to the end of the season it was great. And I actually finished, I got player of the season for Hibs, and finished on good terms, and then left to go to the challenge of Celtic. Yeah.
Was it easier for you to make that transition because of the type of football you were playing under Tony Mowbray and Hibs?
Yeah, I think so. I always played for football teams. I don't think I wasn't a centre half who was 6'5", who could win every header, who was physical. I was physical, but more with my aggression rather than my kind of size and power. So I always ended up playing for football teams because the manager obviously liked that I could bring the ball out from the back. And going to Celtic, that was a big thing, that we were going to have loads of the ball, and Gordon used me for that, to bring the ball out, and then obviously used me in different positions as well after that. Yeah.
What was the biggest difficulty for you, or the biggest transformation from the mindset of Hibs to now being at a club that expected you to win every week?
That was having to win, and any mistake that you made was going to be magnified. I remember the first league game we played Kilmarnock, we won 4-0, I think it was, and I made a mistake, tried to bring the ball out, played a pass, got cut out, and they had a chance. They didn't score from it, but they had a chance, and it was like a big thing. Oh, you know, you can't do that playing for Celtic. And there was a big. I remember the media, and there was a lot said about that. He's not going to be able to play that way playing for Celtic, making those mistakes. So, as a young player, it was about, you know, trying to be perfect and not make mistakes in the big occasion. And that's a difficult thing to do when you're asking players to play from the back, to play out. I look at John Stones down in England now for Man City. He's been crucified for years, really, making mistakes. And now he looks like one of the best centre-halves in the world because he's got a manager who believes in him and who's encouraging him to do the right things. And to be fair to him, he is cutting those small mistakes out to make his game better. I
don't think people realise, like supporters realise when you leave. Oh, Hibs are a big club, but just when you saw you walking down the tunnel there, it's a wow factor. People don't appreciate how your life changes just walking through that front door, what the demands that are on you. You've got to hit the ground running. You've got to try and convince the fans that you are the player that's going to be there. And a lot of players, and we've seen it through the years, coming for like Aberdeen, coming for Dundee United, and not even hacking a year. You know, basically because of the mentality of moving from that club to the demands of Celtic or Rangers, or a big club. And a lot of people can't do it.
You had a tough year the first year. How did you overcome that? Because you mentioned there about the media and things like that. You know, some players are able to shut it out. Did it have an impact on you?
I think in a positive way. I always used it as a motivation. You know, that people say you can't do that, he's not good enough. Then I quite enjoyed it, to be honest. I used it as a motivation to work harder, to get better, and to prove people wrong. So I quite liked having criticism, and I think my managers, you know, I was always somebody that when a manager came in, if anybody was going to get it, I got it, because I think the manager knew that I would respond to that. So the first year was difficult. I had an injury as well, which kind of stopped me halfway through the season, just as I was finding my feet, and then came back to play laterally in the end of the season. But it was difficult the first year, mainly down to the size of the club. It's one of the biggest clubs in the world. I don't think you can get away with that, and I always say that down in England to players. And I took a few up to Champions League games, and when they seen it on a Champions League night, they were like, "Wow, this is as big or bigger than Man United's and the big clubs down in England." And it does have that impact on a player, and you have to be able to deal with that.
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned that you won every domestic honour with Celtic. The titles in the Scottish Cup and the League Cup must have been special, but were the Champions League nights the ones that you really enjoyed? Because if you think, I mean, I was looking at some of the teams that you played against: AC Milan, Man United, Benfica, Spartak Moscow, Shakhtar Donetsk, Villarreal, Arsenal. I mean, great European nights.
Amazing. They were absolutely amazing. To play in that stadium on a night like that is amazing, but to play against the calibre of player that we were playing against in that competition, it is the best. It's the best football gets. And I actually remember, I don't know what game it was, but after the game, I don't know if we'd lost or whatever, but I was speaking to my dad, and he was saying, "Oh, you can get tighter here, you can do this, you can do that better." And I says, "Hold on a minute, it's Thierry Henry, or it's Kaká." And I said, "That's the best football gets." And he was like, "I know, I think you can do this and that better." And that shows you how demanding he was. But it was the pinnacle of football, and you were tested to the very limit of your game. But they were fantastic experiences.
Was there one particular game that you thought, that'll never happen again? It was magic.
The two games that stick out for me are the Shakhtar penalties to qualify, and not necessarily for obviously it wasn't actually a group stage game, but to get in it was so big, it meant so much. And we were actually two evenly matched teams. They were both tight games, one each over there, and then one each at home.
Yeah, was that Spartak Moscow?
Yeah. Jan missed a penalty, I think, during the game, and then it went to penalty kicks, and obviously the drama of penalty kicks. And remember the huddle over the far side of the pitch where Tommy Burns had sprinted the full length for the dugout to jump, and I've got pictures of Tommy jumping on the huddle. And then in the group, the AC Milan game, who had just recently won it, and we played them at home. I remember it was a wet night, raining the whole game. The pitch was quick. The game was so good. The quality, they had Kaká, they had Pirlo. I think Maldini played, Inzaghi. They had, you know, the very best players in Europe at the time. We managed to beat them 2-1 in the last minute, and again the atmosphere was superb.
Yeah, absolutely superb. Did you like working for Gordon?
Brilliant, yeah. I think, you know, everyone knows. I still speak to him now and get on really well with him. A great manager, somebody who pushed you to the very limits and got the very best out of you that he could. Made you a better footballer and got great success with the teams that he had.
Yeah. Were the qualities that he had something that you have tried to take into your own skills, obviously in the embryonic stages of management?
Yeah, I think so. I think I take a lot from him. I think I liked him so much because we were very similar. You know, he was very driven and demanding, and like I said, he pushed you and demanded more from you. And at half time, sometimes it was, for a small man, he could be quite scary.
It's scary in a press conference, never mind your dressing room.
I've had a lot of pieces of fruit thrown at me. But then, if you responded to that at the end of the game, he'd just come up and pat you on the back or give you a wink, and that made you feel so good that, you know, you would do anything for him, and he was a great manager. It
must have been great for you to win the Football Writers Player of the Year, you know, when people realise, you know, what you've been doing for a full season.
Yeah, that was good. I think now when you finish and you look back, then personal honours, they mean a bit more now probably than they did then, because I was very much part of the team, and, you know, always want to promote the team environment. So at the time you just kind of went, yeah, great, I'm part of a team. But when you look back now, it probably means a little bit more to have had the criticism and kind of been questions that I might not even get in this team, to then be acknowledged as a major part of it was special.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, after this quick break, we are going to talk about Scotland, because if you think Champions League games are special, Ruffy, he was involved in more than a few special games, and of course, I don't want to rub it in, but he managed to score a winner in a game that will never be forgotten.
Yeah,
in fact, two games will never be forgotten.
Yeah, I was there that night. The couple of things I remember, obviously the weather was horrendous, and then obviously the goal that meant so much to everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can always look back. I wonder how often you look back though with medals and games. You should do, especially when you score a goal that defeats France at Hampden, never to be forgotten. We'll talk about Gary Caldwell playing for Scotland, some memorable games and some very good players playing alongside him. This is Peter and Ruffy's Football Show, and our special guest is Gary Caldwell. Join us after the break. Welcome back to Peter and Ruffy's Football Show. Gary Caldwell is our guest tonight. Thoroughly enjoying the chat with Gary. We've been talking about club football, but for country, it must be a tremendous honour, not only to represent your country, but to go 55 times is, you must look back with tremendous pride.
Yeah, I do. I think anybody would say when you play for your country, it is different. It means more. The backing you get from, you know, the whole country, the lead up to a game, that they are special. And as soon as I got my first cap, I wanted more, you know. And 50 was always it was kind of that figure that obviously you get noticed in the Hall of Fame, and it was always something I wanted to try and achieve. And, you know, I would go with slight niggles, with slight injuries, and go and play for my country and do whatever I could to try and get there. And I did. The only thing would be it's, you know, a little bit, tinged with a little bit of sadness that none of them were in a major finals, and that would have made it even more special. Yeah.
Usually we don't let anybody on the programme who's got more caps than Ruffy, but you've sneaked it by two, Gary. I've got to ask you, you said that you got your first cap and you wanted more, but your first cap, you don't get absolutely hammered 5-0 by France. You must have been thinking, well, what am I doing? I mean, this is a great photograph. What happened
That's
there?
Obviously at 4-0. They were sensational. They were an unbelievable team. Some of the best players I'd ever seen, and we couldn't get near them. Zidane, Trezeguet, Henry, they had Petit, Vieira. it was unbelievable. And it was funny because it was Bertie's first game, and the team talk the night before, he had us getting on the ball, and he had us getting in attacking areas, and we were all kind of looking at each other thinking, does he know? Does he know? I think he thought he had Germany. And after the game, you could see in his face, he thought, what's going on here? But they were unbelievable that night. And again, just to be on the park with those players was great. Obviously disappointing to get hammered like that, but gives you that drive and determination to say, I must be better, I need to get better to try and compete with these people.
Yeah, of all the Scotland managers, which one did you enjoy the most?
I think Walter was, when he came in, it was at a low point. We were really, struggling to get results. Even the fans were a bit disillusioned by everything. And he came in. I'll never forget, he had his first get-together. It was actually at Mottram Hall, just where I live now in Manchester. Because he was at Manchester United just before he came in. And he just took us there for 4 or 5 days, bit of training, bit of golf, went for a meal. But he had a chat for 2 hours that was just, you were just captivated for 2 hours, and you just wanted to follow him and believed everything he said and what he was going to do. He explained how we were going to play, when he was going to name the team, how he was going to prepare for games, and he wanted everyone to buy into it, and everyone did, and we got success from it.
Yeah, and of course he had a great mix, because having Ali and Tommy there, it was just you couldn't get 3 better characters, all different personalities.
Honestly, it was 10 days. When you went away for the 10 days, you just laughed for 10 days. It was obviously serious, and there was times when we had to work hard and prepare and get serious, but the laughs that we had and the jokes that we had and the squad and the togetherness, which is so important. If you've got that, then I think you've got half a chance. But his organisation as well, his defensive work and the way he prepared us defensively for games, we must have been a nightmare to play against. It must have been really difficult to play against us because we were so defensively well organised.
Yeah, and with that in mind, if your first game against France was a nightmare, the one at Hampden, it must have been great. A little bit of revenge, albeit a totally different squad, mindset, manager, and suddenly you score the winning goal against them.
Yeah, I think, like you say, it's the change in mindset and the manager and his approach. And I've never played in a game or managed a game since that game where everything he said, and I mean everything, kind of worked and went exactly to how he said it was going to happen. I've obviously tried it as a manager and it never works. But he said for 15 minutes we're going to need to ride our luck. We did. I think they hit the post. Craig made a few good saves. He says they'll get more and more frustrated. They did. We will grow into the game. We did second half. And he said we'd score from a set piece.
Talking about being a prophet.
Did he say it was going to be you? That'd be it.
The face, the joy. It's just absolutely sensational. What did you think after it?
I remember getting in. I think it was the 67th minute, because I remember getting in and looking at the scoreboard and thinking, "Oh, we've got a long way to go here. We could get beat 4 or 5-1." But amazing day. Hampden was bouncing. The togetherness of the players and getting back in the change room after a result like that was brilliant, and it was a really enjoyable time.
Yeah, well, if you're talking about the managers and how special Walter was, you must have enjoyed some of the players. I think that squad, sometimes I just look and think, how did some of the players that you played with not get to major championships? It must have been something that just bewildered you at the best of times. Who did you enjoy playing with?
I think we did have we had a good mix, I think, at that time of experienced players and younger ones like myself, Kenny, Faddy coming through, and laterly obviously Scott Brown started joining that group. But the experienced ones like Davy Weir, Stephen Presley were really important again. Christian Daly, really important players who told you what was needed at specific times. when you're young you need that, and then we carry that on to when we become older, we carry that on. I always think the experienced players in the teams are so important.
Yeah. Was that the best memory you ever had in a Scotland jersey?
Yeah, I think so. I said at the time I'd like to obviously eclipse it and get to a major finals, which I think would have if we'd ever qualified, but it wasn't to be. So yeah, I think looking back, that was the high point.
Yeah, I can't let you go without telling the story though of the game in the Parc des Princes. I mean, we loved it because if we thought you mugged them at Hampden, boy, did you mug them in the Parc des Princes. I mean, I'll never forget that game. I mean, I'm only celebrating a nutmeg in the halfway line, but I can't believe you missed the goal.
No, I was just saying, I mean, we talk now about Mourinho and teams that park the bus, but they must be two of the best performances at parking a bus. That was a few buses that we parked. And the away game, the first game we did get hammered, but the away game was relentless. They just came wave after wave, chance after chance, and it was blocks, it was a save, it was a bit of luck here and there, but the boys putting their bodies on the line was incredible. And I was on the bench, I was just saying, I went to the toilet, you know, thinking it was a bit, I don't know, it was just early in the second half, so I thought, you know, you might be coming on, you need to be ready. So as I came back out, the security guy said, it's 1-0, and I went, not thinking that we had scored, because it's impossible to score when you don't get another team's half. And then came out, the place was silent, our bench was buzzing, and another great night and an amazing result.
Yeah, did Alec have that same type of ethos as Walter? The team looked as if it made that easy transition.
Yeah, we came in at a time that we had the blueprint. You could say that we were playing well, we were confident, we were beating some good teams, and he had a good squad, so he came in at a good time and just carried it on really, and we were really, really unlucky not to qualify that year.
And then Peter can think back to that night. I mean, you're saying the last 10 minutes was incredible. We were all in the stand, you know, the sort of a Scottish media together, and you were saying yous were all blocking and tackling. You want to have seen the media? We were all blocking and tackling. We were all diving in as well. It was just the last 10 minutes was crazy.
Oh,
you know, I remember Paul Hartley running about like a maniac, just left and right, and everybody just lunging in, stopping. It was an incredible night.
Yeah, and
we have to thank you for the night after it, because we.
I'm glad you can remember the night after, because I can't. Although I have to tell you, and I might as well give you the public apology right now on this programme, to think that at times we used to give you and Stephen McManus pelters as centre halves for Scotland, and now, Ruffy, there's many a time when we looked and we thought to ourselves, God, we could do with Gary Caldwell and Stephen McManus, couldn't we?
Oh, it's just a.
Must be bad.
And every time we're on at a Scotland game, that's the first thing that comes up.
Yeah, I mean, 55 caps, as we mentioned, is special. I've got to ask you this question, because I asked Ruffy, you know, and he annoys the life out of me with it, because he played against so many great players. Did you get strips that you kept, that you savour?
You know, again, it's something at the time I didn't, and you just, you know, you don't think it would be important, and now looking back, you think I wish I had. I've got a few, and I tell my boys now, you know, they ask, Dad, have you played against him? And it's actually funny, I was telling them the other day, I played against Neymar. He must have been about 12, and he still scored 2. When we played at the Emirates, we played them in a friendly. And he loves Neymar now, so he's like, have you played against him? And I said, actually, I have, aye. And I got him a picture and showed him playing against Neymar. But I've not got many strips, but I've got the memories, and obviously you get the odd picture to show my kids and show them.
I mean, I never mentioned my 3 World Cup finals ever.
No, no, absolutely. We very rarely talk about it on the show. Any guest we get, he manages to ram it in, and he's done it again. The good thing about it is your boys grow up, Gary. For every strip that you've got, they can wear them as night shirts as well, as your daughters used to do on many an occasion, walking about getting ready for bed in the number 10 Zico shirt. Now that takes some doing, doesn't it? Okay, Scotland, great to chat chat to Gary about those wonderful memories, some that we shared. After the break, we're going to talk about his time in England, and then we'll talk about what he's doing now, what he hopes to do in the future as well. It's a great ride down memory lane and a look to the future coming up next with our special guest, Gary Caldwell. Welcome back to Peter and Ruffy's Football Show. Gary Caldwell is with us here. We've been talking about his career for club and country. Of course, after Celtic, it's down to Wigan. Now, if you're talking about how big a club Celtic is, suddenly you're down in a league where, you know, everybody wants to get to it. Did you enjoy your 6 years there? Yeah,
I loved it. I obviously had a great time at Celtic, and I just felt the challenge of the Premier League. It was almost like playing in the Champions League week in, week out against the quality you were coming up against. Obviously without the atmosphere and stuff, but the quality of player, the level of competition was really difficult, and I wanted to go and test myself and improve and get better, and I think I did. I think I became a better player down there, and you know, I'm glad I had that experience. Yeah,
of many players that I've spoken to with a Scottish connection who played down there, you know, whether it's a goalkeeper or an outfield player, they would say to me the difference, you know, as you mentioned, it's Champions League football week in, week out. It's players who have a great touch, think quicker, hit the ball earlier, you know, and you have to adjust to that, realising that these players are so sharp. Is that something that you quickly realised?
It is, yeah. I mean, the standard is just so much higher. Even like physically, I had to change. You know, I lost a lot of weight, and to just stay the sharpness, the speed that the players played at, the forwards especially. You know, you had to adapt your game and be physically ready to play against them. And I remember one game we played Man United and Van Persie when he had just signed, and he scored a goal that he was coming down on his left foot, so I've come across. He's obviously going to shoot. He's chopped back inside, and with his right foot, put it in the top corner. And Roberto Martinez is trying to have a go, and I'm like,
what can you do?
You know, it was great play, and sometimes you just had to hold your hand up and say, you know, these players were top players, and on any given day, if they were on it, they could really hurt you.
Yeah, and the laws of percentages with Van Persie, Ruffy, you would have tried to show him, you know.
Yeah, but not only him. You know, if you look at the top English teams back then, their main players were the strikers. You know, their big money players were the stars. So they were the kind of players you're coming up against. So that would make it even harder.
Yeah, who was the most difficult to play against?
He was right up there. I think Suarez. For a bit at Liverpool. I actually pulled my hamstring against Suarez. I don't know how I done that, but I was obviously trying to run that fast to catch him. He was just so quick. And I remember Roberto prepared a video about him trying to nutmeg, and it was amazing. He tried to nutmeg you, but picked up the loose ball, you know, if it ricocheted, and he was just so sharp and quick. And as I said, I pulled my hamstring one game against him because he was just relentless in his movement and the speed at which he played the game.
Yeah, and of course Wigan was good for you because, again, I think once you settled in there as well, you were the club's player of the year, but there was a lot of recognition for what you were doing down there. Did you sense that as well, that you'd been able to raise that game, raise that level week in, week out?
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I think when I went down at first, Roberto took me down to try and raise the standards of the football club. We were obviously, he had been in the job for 6 months, and we were a team that was always going to struggle. And I think me coming from Celtic, the way I am, my daily kind of standards and demands, to when I first went in, I thought, well, you know, this isn't like a Celtic. We used to have a fight every day.
Yeah.
You know, there'd be fisticuffs pretty much every day. There'd be an argument. There'd be a tackle in training. And I went down there and I thought, oh, this is different. It was, you know, easy. Nobody was really shouting. There weren't many tackles. And I just went in and done what I was doing at Celtic and tackled, started shouting, started raising the level of the standard. And it was enjoyable having that responsibility that the manager gave me.
Yeah, you picked up an injury which again made it difficult for you in that FA Cup run, but thankfully you were at least involved in the squad in the final.
I was, yeah. My hips, when I first went down, I had double hip surgery that summer, which was difficult. And actually, looking back, I came back too quickly. I should have really took my time. Everyone was saying take your time, but I wanted to get back as quick as I could and get playing again. And if I'd probably left it longer, it might have prolonged my career a little bit. But I got back quickly. I played 100 games after that, just over 100 games, and I did feel much better after that surgery. And then the second time I had to go in and get my left one done, I was never the same after that, and played 4 games. But the FA Cup run was, I was actually taking injections to train at that time, just to go out and train. The doctor that we had was a genius. He could, if you just went up quietly and said, "Can you do this for me?" Yeah. He'd give you injections. Looking back now, was silly at the time, but it got me out there and got me on the bench for an incredible day in the club's history. For a club like Wigan to go and win the FA Cup was an unbelievable story. Yeah.
Do you have that doctor's number for Ruffy and myself? Just to prolong our playing careers. I've got to ask you now, you had player at Wigan, but you had the manager. You won League One Manager of the Year down there with them. Was it easy making the transition?
It was, yeah. I was, from a very young age, I always knew I wanted to coach, I wanted to manage, I wanted to stay in football. I had done, my badges. I had done my A up to then. So I was working in the academy. A lot of people were like, "Oh, he's went straight in," but at that point I was doing work in the academy for about a year from that point. So I was doing coaching. I'd coached the first team on occasion. I was working with the reserves, the under-18s, under-8s. I was doing everything. So I was ready for the opportunity. I had some great people around me, great staff. I knew the club inside out, and it was a time when we were really struggling. We dropped into League One from the heights of the Premier League, and it was an important time for the club to try and come back.
Was it difficult winning over the players from being one of them to then being the manager? Or did you get 100% support?
I must say the first group of players were amazing, because like you say, I was literally sitting next to them one day, and the next day I was the manager, and it would have been easy for them to kind of have a bit of a joke, but they were very respectful. They just got straight down to work. They actually, if anything, probably tried too hard, because they knew me as a person. They were trying too hard for me, and in that summer, because we got relegated, a lot of them left. So the next year was easier because I could build my own team, and it wasn't. There was still probably 3 or 4 players who I'd played quite a lot of games with. But it was my squad after that. Yeah,
I always view Chesterfield as just, it reminds me of Gordon Strachan always said, sometimes as a manager you're only as good as your players. And if it's a bad lot or a lot that can't do what you're trying to ask them to do, suddenly your CV gets tarnished. And is that the way you look at it?
It was difficult. It was difficult. I look at it as a positive that I'm a better manager now for the experience than I was before I went in there. So I try and take the positives out of it, but it was difficult, and it's going to take time to turn the club around, as is proven the case since I've not been there. It's going to take time. It's going to take 2 or 3 transfer windows. We signed 17 players in the summer, and I always say that if you get 50% of them right, you're a very good manager, and you've got a very good eye for a player, because even the best, Sir Alex Ferguson, if you go through the course of his career, he probably did, if he got 50% of his signings right, then that would be fair on even the very best. So you're always going to need 2 or 3 windows to really get your squad together and play a certain way. And whilst I try and play the game the way I think it should be played, it's difficult. You need time to try and do that. And I got that at Wigan and got success. And ultimately at Chesterfield I didn't, but I'm happy for the experience and feel like I'm a better manager for it.
Yeah, and with that in mind, I know you're keen to get back in. Would you consider Scotland in the Premiership, or have you got that hope that you can get something down south again?
I would consider anything. I'm even open to you know, coaching, being an assistant manager, I'm still only 35-year-old, and I feel like really my career should just be finishing. So I'm open to anything. I feel like I've got a lot to give to the game, to give back to whatever club would like to kind of bring me in. But I'm looking for a club that is, you know, wants to really do something and wants to give it time, because I think this short-termism that is happening at the minute isn't good for managers, definitely, but it's not good for clubs either to build something.
Yeah. What's the best bit of advice you've been given?
I've been given loads. I think I got my first budget and somebody told me, they said, spend it as quick as you can. And I said, but that's the budget, like we need that. And he said, spend it. He said, there'll be more. So I did try and look after the budget, so it's something that, you know, I think when you're working for a club, you really feel, as a player, you just get on with your job. As the manager, you feel a responsibility for the football club and the people at the football club higher up. And I've really enjoyed, I've worked with some good people at both clubs, and like I said, it's just, you need time to really get the success that you want.
Yeah, I have to tell you, it's been an absolute joy listening to you, but there's 1,000,001 young managers going, spend the budget as quick as you can. It's a great bit of advice. I'm sure there's a few sharing a smile. Listen, we hope you get back involved in football. I hope someone is watching that looks and thinks 35, lot to offer, a lot of great experience. Hopefully you've enjoyed the programme from Ruffy and myself and our special guest, Gary Caldwell. Thanks for watching. Good night.